Hey everybody, welcome to episode 75 of Tactical Crouch, but this one will be known as the first ever Overwatch League recap episode or something else. I'm KickedTripod, joined with Yiska and Volamel. Before we jump into it though, quick reminder, if you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch or subscribe right here at twitch.tv/KickedTripod. We're also on a new schedule, so if you missed the announcement last week, you're tuning in for the first time, missed our tweets about it, we're going to be going live on Mondays and Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific for our Overwatch League recap and preview episodes. We're going to split it up a little bit. We'll explain it in a second. But as this is our first recap episode, here's a little bit more about how the format is going to work. Since we're doing 2 shows a week, these episodes are probably going to be a little bit shorter and are going to be, this one particularly is going to be focusing on what happened over the weekend. So if any news happens, we're going to cover it. And we're also going to cover the results, implications of those results, and anything else that is kind of noteworthy from that. We're going to post the show everywhere as soon as we can edit the show. And we'll also split it up a little bit later on if we need to into different clips. But we're going to kind of play that one by ear. And then from there, on Wednesday, we'll do our preview episode, which is going to preview the upcoming homestands. Or in this case, for this week, homestand. So, yikes. Huh? Yikes. But
yeah.
we'll talk about that at the preview episode. We won't talk about it during the recap episode. Instead, let's talk about last week's last week's matches. But first, big thank you to our patron producers, Battlecrab Made Pin, Lolshin, Charlie Ellen, Audio Compass for supporting the show. We really appreciate you. All right. Yiska, let's go 40,000 feet or 12,000 meters in the sky, if you will. Okay. And let's discuss just the overall weekend, I think, first. This is the first time where we had 2 homestands going at once. This is the first time that we've seen the new homestand method be actually fully implemented versus one weekend over the past week. How did you feel about it, I think, overall?
I think for this one, it was kind of enjoyable in the sense that you had back-to-back homestands, which isn't, by the way, a given, especially once we go into China and Europe, even though I think Europe might actually work that way. I'm not sure. But in that regard, it was great. I thought both teams did a pretty good job. I also was sort of anticipating these hiccups in terms of everything that we had a couple of points of criticism, especially that the community leveled at them from not having the scrim environments that they were supposedly imagining to have. I think everyone that watched this show over the last half year or a year knows that this was going to happen. The production, some of it was obviously obnoxious, like the crunch time stuff, especially in.
Did you say a crunch time?
No.
Yeah, it's there. The cheese at oofs.
Nice. But yeah, I think in general, I found myself just after having watched all the matches back to front, staying up at night, and then on the second day, the first series was done, and I was like, oh, there's only 6 more hours of Overwatch, and that kind of feels bad. So I'm definitely digging, finally getting some games going. Some very good games. Observing at New York was, in my opinion, very good. They caught a lot of important plays, focused on the important players. Of course, you cannot have a 100% hit rate or hit chance, especially probably in this meta with it being so unexplored and ever changing now. So overall, I'm actually kind of in a positive mood about how everything went down.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to kind of like, we can make the Cheez-It jokes all we want and stuff. And production definitely had issues, I think, outside of the games themselves. But we even saw some pause during the games and stuff, which, I don't know, like, isn't unexpected, if I'm being honest. You're setting up and tearing down so much equipment week after week. It's going to take the crews everywhere a little bit of, settling in, I think, for that to really start running smoothly. I don't know. It was good. I think I know we were joking a ton about the seventh man in Discord over the weekend, but I do think that it ended up being a really great thing for home teams and fans to be able to go there, and I do think that that's going to be a factor as we move into just this more home and away type thing. The one thing I did notice, though, YouTube quality sucks, huh?
Yeah, not great.
Unfortunately, yeah.
It's not great. It was not great at all.
No.
I tried to watch on the MLG website, but the thing is you can't rewind. So YouTube has this nice thing where you can like pause it, rewind it, all in the same feed. So it's really easy to go back and watch a play again, and then you can catch up during the 2-minute breaks, and that was really like nice to be able to do. But the just like the overall quality of it, I felt like was lacking. Even though the bit rate was being sent significantly higher, I don't know if it was an encoding issue on the Overwatch League, and I know Call of Duty, I was really unhappy with the quality as well. So I don't know, but I think the desk was really good. I liked having Reinforce and Custa, and then they switched between Achilleos and Wolf and Zoe on there.
I think it'll grow. I think they need time to kind of like get a bearing for what they want to do. I know while we were watching the games, Yiska pointed out, the lack of Telestrator definitely sucks. And I have to agree with that. Like there was one point that Johnny was attempting to make, and it was just being kind of long-winded and verbose. And I think the essence of the idea was really interesting, and I think it would have been better for a Telestrator segment instead of just being like this long-winded, well, okay, if X happens then Y can happen, and then B and then C, and then all of these different parts of this point that he's trying to make. You're already lost, and you only have about 5 minutes to get through a death segment. So
to be fair, that actually was also, so the timing of this moment, if I recall correctly, was that there actually was time to bridge to, because like the second day were basically stomps, and they had like 30 minutes to bridge, 40. So I want to see these Telestrator segments just breaking that stuff down. And I, especially for the points that Johnny was making, the point, by the way, totally not devalued by Sinatra saying, lol, I just said I want to play Doom in comms. Like, that's just a subconscious way at arriving at the same point. Yes. I feel like
it's called intuition. Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. And, I think for these occasions, that's where you want to have the Telestrator 100%. Segments in the future.
Or just be able to break the show up into different segments. And, you have like the whole, this segment sponsored by Cheez-Its, and, the what was it? The Sour Patch Kids last season, whatever moment, turn it into something sweet, whatever. I would like to see like off desk, somebody working with clips and working as like a Telestrator. If anybody's familiar with the UFC, Dan Hardy does a great breakdown show, but I think you could kind of take the essence of that and apply it to the Overwatch League desk, especially when you do have these 3-0 stomps. I want to see that expanded out. I want to see Custa and Reinforce use their former, knowledge and really kind of flex their brains, because so far it's fine. I mean, I don't see a huge difference in quality from last year in terms of like what's being said. but I think obviously that can increase. But so far, yeah, it's fine. I want to see it grow a little bit more. I want to kind of revisit this point, mid-season and towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I think it was a great start. Like I think I don't think there was a single part of this entire weekend that can't be criticized. Definitely wasn't a flawless launch. I think yeah, I don't know. I think I guess maybe my expectations were set too low on what to expect from a desk segment to begin with, but I thought it was great. I expect long-winded analytical answers from Johnny when he talks. So I don't know. Like, I guess it's just like, of course, it's reinforced. But yeah, I don't really have much more to say other than thought the meta that we saw this weekend was pretty interesting. It was pretty surprising. A lot of McCree, Widowmaker, Tracer. We saw a little bit here and there.
A lot of different things.
Sabiobi on Tracer again, and just reminding me why they developed that third-party camera, following camera. It's like, I'm getting sick. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know, Joe. Like, was this kind of the meta you were expecting to see, or?
Oh, 100%. I think from what we were kind of overhearing, what, was being shown through social media channels, a lot of Rhine, a lot of May. You did see some teams try to pilot the Rhine Orisa to a strong degree. McCree kind of biddling about at least preseason, but now he seems to be quite a lock, especially into the Reaper. But in general, yeah, I would say this is pretty expected. But I think the big kind of question in my mind is how this might change come hero pools. May seems to be like a standard, like you're not getting off of May, you're not getting off of Rhine, unless you're obviously the Vancouver Titans. But I think they're a different animal. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But what heroes are going to get moved? How does that change things? That's kind of what I'm looking at, because if the pools aren't as big, if it's not as random as they make it out to seem, May goes away. What does this meta look like then? So it's pretty interesting, but yeah, to answer the question, I think it's pretty on the nose on exactly what we were expecting.
To be honest, I would have thought that Western teams had even more variety outside. This basically like, I don't know, German ice skating core. Like Lucio, May, Reinhardt, and then a lot of picks were substituted, like support was rotated around, and then the off tank as well, and then of course DPS as well, right? Like the one DPS always seemed to be the flexible part in the vast majority of cases. So I thought we'd see even more variety, but I also think it sort of converged in that particular scrim bubble we saw. Like, okay, no, actually, like, of course, some of those scrim bubbles were colliding necessarily because they form in the first place also just because of ping differences or infeasibility of scrimming there, but also because teams play against each other. So I thought we would see even more diversity, and we saw some. I thought it would be even more, and I wonder once the Asian teams come in, and we don't know when, if we will see a different take, because I feel like we'd see otherwise a lot more Sombra than we did.
Totally. And I think that once we do get the Asian teams in, I think you're going to see, if we could just, remove hero pools from the equation for a moment, I think we kind of talked about this pretty early on in the preseason, that with the regional differences, with, being able to practice only against teams in those specific regions, you're going to have very large bubbles. And it's always even nice to see that there's tiny little bubbles popping up inter-regionally as well. So I think to your point, once we do get those Asian teams, I think things would have mixed up, but hero pools are a different beast.
I do think it's interesting that the all Korean teams did at one point or another run dive, where we didn't really see the Western teams run that, right? You saw NYXL ran dive, you saw Titans run dive. I believe we saw Paris at one point run a version of it. I could be misremembering. I thought I remember there was a push on.
I think Boston ran
I might
it
take
on
that
Oasis.
I might
think
take that
Boston
back.
Sorry,
opened
which team
Oasis.
are you saying ran dive?
NYXL ran dive.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
And Vancouver Titans ran dive.
Defiant ran dive. A weird dive, but like on defense Horizon, where they had like
and then it
Beast
immediately
on the
failed.
rafters,
Yeah.
Doom. No,
Yeah.
they actually held the. Okay, they failed holding A, but
Yeah.
they completely
Yeah, and then
held
yes.
B for the entire duration with that composition, if I
Yes.
recall correctly.
And they stopped them pretty hard. They stonewalled them at B.
Yeah.
But on A, it was a mess.
Yes. But I think that's the point of that comp, to like sort of forsake A and then have the rafters, and that's a map peculiarity
Sure.
in the sense that you never have that high ground, this inaccessible to non-dive characters on any other map practically because of the structure. And then they could just pick the targets that they wanted to. And then they had the EMPs and whatnot, and like Doom was in position, and Beast could drop on them. I mean, playing Monkey wasn't fun, but it worked somehow.
It was effective,
at least in forcing out a couple of defensive cooldowns, and then you just clean up. I thought that was kind of an interesting take, actually, one of the more interesting strategies that we saw.
I don't know if I necessarily agree that the whole plan was to just sack A. I think they just kind of botched A. I think they wanted to either fight in the choke, and that main choke where teams tend to funnel in, or as they walk up the stairs on that farthermost side next to like the outside area where you go into like space and zero Gs. I think that's where they wanted to take the fight. But if I remember correctly, and chat can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they used the Symmetra teleporter to kind of circumvent those choke points, and it really messed things up. And I don't know that they had a good execute on retaking once they got onto the point. So I don't know if I'd agree that they were just supposed to cap or just sack A, but it definitely showed how good they were at the composition and their plan on B. So I definitely give that credit.
Yeah, it was exciting to watch at the very least. I think a lot of the excitement just has to do with it being the first time we've seen competitive Overwatch in a few months, and it comes back and it's not what we saw at the end of season 2. And we're seeing a lot of brand new players and a lot of brand new teams, and you're kind of in a point where I think and this is, I think, a lot on the observers, but the kind of carry DPS playing across May was just a focal point of whatever we were watching, right? So you got to see exciting players like XZ. You got to finally see, like a striker point of view on a McCree. I mean, we saw that on Oasis where he basically single-handedly, that was so sick. So it was exciting to see. Saw Logix on Widowmaker in Havana. That was pretty fun.
I'm gonna need some candles, Yiska. I think we need to break out the old Lord Logic shrine. I think we need to break that out. I'm just saying.
If you want to treat, man.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think we need to go into that whole Reaper pick and that whole philosophy. But if you want to treat, go ahead and go on to use Yiska's YouTube channel and sift through some of the older videos, and you'll find some Lord Logic's prayers, let's say, some seances.
I think it's actually on G-rated, but
is it?
Yeah. But the thing is, I felt like Logix had something to prove, maybe, and I'm actually like I just released a piece on that particular match, right? Like between the Defiant and the Eternal. And of course, like if you think about that match, what stood out was like that play where he like gets up in Havana C and just hits XC. And the headline for that particular clip I chose is Logix puts X in these eyes. Haha. It is cool. Joe, please. That's actually sick. Bars. Okay. Oh yeah, I got that rolling on stream. Yeah. Nice. Okay. But yeah, even the frags before that frag were actually quite impressive. And
definitely 100%. Like barring Yiska's terrible humor, Logix definitely showed some movie star riders level performance there. So that was a nice kind of return to form for him, and I hope he continues.
So let's talk about the Toronto Defiant then. We'll skip around these matches in no particular order, but since we're talking about them already, Toronto Defiant walk away 1-0, defeating Paris Eternal in the opening match. I think this was one of the matches where the odds were actually technically against the Toronto Defiant. So Paris Eternal were favored to win if you're making any of that esports money on the side this weekend. But ended up going 3-1. I know Yiska, you and I on day one were one map off.
Yep.
The whole day. So the same map, by the way. But we have to be nice because Baroy's in the chat, I think. But how did you feel about the Toronto Defiant's debut going up against the Paris Eternal?
I think they matched up well in general. It's also there are some questions in terms of Paris preparation towards that. I'm not sure if they, and I'm not saying I have any leaks. It's just weird that with which tanks they arrived there. I'll also say that I felt like on top of everything, and I might be like simplifying or having too much of a simplistic view on this, but it seemed like they were playing around Reaper flanks a ton in terms of like on the maps that they chose Reaper, which was actually quite a bit. And only really then on GCP was Paris able to read that accurately. I would say FD God did a great job shutting down these flanks very often, but it's also then like there was a lot of pressure I felt also on the front line constantly, especially like that Eichenwald win push comes to mind. By the way, great shatter from Beast on defense to just like seconds or like half a second before he got frozen, he hits a fat shatter there and gave them the chance to win that map so easily. So I think FD God did his best to keep Chauffeur off, but ultimately like just like the pressure and also maybe Paris having a little bit mispositioned on the tanks in that particular instance on the last fight just like didn't give them the opportunity to do that there. But yeah, in general, I feel like they were definitely the more cohesive team in terms of strategy, in terms of just having an idea what to do. They seem to have creative game plans, as mentioned on the Horizon. Also, I don't think anyone ran anything remotely similar to them. I mean, okay, let's talk about this as well, because just because you see a team play a comp that for the first time doesn't necessarily mean that they invented it. It is possible that they scrim one of a different team that came up with it and they just adapted. Or like, for instance, I think a lot what had happened this weekend is actually on the shock in many ways, and them disseminating that into the scrim universe, if you may. So yeah, kind of definitely interesting. Kind of sad that we only saw them once. I would have liked to see just like how they match up in terms of matchups when it's not. I think so. Paris basically against them was a lot of XCI show as well as FT God. I would have wondered what would happen if there was a team that maybe had more cohesion and also was better at shutting down these flanks on some maps where they played Reaper. So kind of sad that we didn't see them play again. I'm not sure when we do. Do they have a match next week? I'm not sure, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I think Beast redeemed himself a little bit. His first two maps were really shaky, especially on Reinhardt. I think he definitely turned around on Winston, played better, but he missed 3 of his first 4 shatters, like pretty awfully. And so I think for me, I'm most worried if I'm like a Toronto Defiant fan. I'm most worried about if Reinhardt continues to be a must pick, having him on that. I think he played better, but this is also against, these teams are both in bottom 7-ish, let's just say, at least where we've had them before. And I think that they still are probably right around there. from what we know and the teams that we've seen so far.
Mm.
So I get even more worried once we're like, what does that look like against even an LA Gladiators, right? Where I think they're going to
that
get
would have
even
been
more
interesting.
punished.
True.
So
Yeah.
but I don't want to be too hard on Beast. I think, especially on his Winston, I thought he played really well. We especially saw that on Village in, on Village in Nepal, right?
Mm.
Saw him bust out the Winston. I think that was the first time where he finally switched over to Winston and looked a lot better, looked a lot cleaner. So, yeah.
I also kind of want to highlight the use of Ana here. I think this is obviously the first match where we got to see a lot of the support picks. We did get to see on that Horizon match a little bit of Calyx Flex support, which wasn't fantastic, but again, I think it's more of a simplistic thing where you can stand back, apply discords, be very safe, shoot from a distance. You have a ton of space to work with, especially when your tanks are jumping from the rafters and immediately fighting them in choke. So there's really not a ton of threat. And obviously Paris doesn't have a diva to kind of just flank around and try to assassinate you. But Ana in general was kind of surprising in how much it was picked and how much people are kind of going on shoulder content and saying it's like very, very good right now, super, super strong. We are seeing certain teams deviate away from it a little bit. Some teams are running a little bit more Moira. I think on Control Center on Li Jiang, we're seeing a lot more Baptiste, but Ana play in general, I would say is kind of a quite a big spectrum with some overperformers and some people just really not finding any value on it. And I think I'd have to go back and look, but I wasn't super impressed with Kariv when you compare him to a lot of the other supports that we saw this weekend. As much as we bag on him with the whole Roll Stars meme, when you compare him to someone like Jonak,
I mean,
I think the difference is night and day. But there again, it's Jonak, right? So it's tough to say.
Unreal kid.
But there's so it's difficult to be able to find those nades, and the fact that you're not having to nade into a diva, I've got to imagine that we could have saw a little bit more value out of that, and I didn't. We saw some sleep darts, which I have to give him credit for, but so far, not really that impressed.
That's a lot of shields. I don't know, to work around with Ana too. Like I agree with you, and I think when we talk about Paris, a big thing we'll have to talk about is Smex not being there to run that off tank role, and how much of that ended up being, could Paris have beat Toronto Defiant with Smex, right? Like, I don't know. I don't think so, but I think it creates a new discussion for sure of, it's difficult to run double main tank, and I think they did it admirably.
I think that's probably the big reason why they did it. If I had to imagine that this isn't some sort of like visa or some sort of like punishment thing, I've got to imagine that like Ryan Arisa, for a team that has like a new coaching staff, a new roster that's kind of, still struggling with the communication barriers, we want to just like make things as simple as possible. And I think the Ryan Arisa really is very cut and dry. The win conditions are super generic. You just kind of run at people, you halt them in, everybody kind of just collapses on a target, and then you play from there. Obviously, it's generally more nuanced depending on the map, but I think that's a pretty accepted win condition for this composition. And I think for this team where it's at right now, I think it fits. I would like to see more flex tanks obviously played, but in general, with what they played on Kings Row in their Sunday match with the Sigma, which I still am questioning. I still think it's pretty similar though, where it's a lot of shield pressure. It's a lot of just forward aggression. You're being super proactive, which puts people on the back foot. And that's kind of a straightforward approach. It's not super about rotations. It's not flanking. This isn't NYXL's Kings Row. And I think that's fine for Paris at the moment, but I want to see them evolve throughout the season. I don't want to see this, come week 10.
So you think not having Smex there was an intentional decision?
I think so. If I'm going to be completely honest, if this,
I don't think so.
I think there's some legs to that. I think it could be a strategic choice, I'll say.
To me, like Ben Best being told to play Sigma 24 hours before he had to. Don't know.
Smex tweet also just doesn't read about something where You know, like I don't know if it was a visa issue or maybe just a travel thing or just like a XQC and World Cup thing where he had to do something else before he
It
could
wasn't
make it
visa,
there.
but yeah, like Vala during the press conference said it wasn't visa. But there's a plethora of things where we don't, or of explanations where we don't have to go all drama. Oh, what is you know?
100%,
It's just
right.
like his sister gave birth, or like he wasn't feeling well, or
Totally.
like you know, like just like.
But that's where it's weird to
stuff
me.
that happen in life where it's just like you don't want to talk about it necessarily
Sure.
in a press conference, but like it doesn't have to be drama. So also I'm not sure, like
Felt circumstantial.
Smex is like, yeah, Smex to me is like either it really, really matters because he pops off, or it really, really doesn't matter because he's a very inconsistent player to me.
I mean, we're on the Paris Eternal, so we might as well just keep talking about them a little bit. They fell to the Toronto Defiant, who we just talked about. Then they defeat the London Spitfire 3-0, and I think that was probably the most surprising result from the entire weekend. I mean, we should probably talk a little bit more then about that London Paris game, and I don't know, try and dissect what happened here. I mean, there's a lot. I think it was FD God. I think this is definitely the match where FD God really, I think, popped off, and then kind of everybody got on the FD God train after that, especially after Sanctum on Nepal, right, where he was just kind of insane. He was shutting down Glister on his own in King's Row, which is just dumb. Those EU Lucios make Yiska proud, I think.
True.
You know,
actually the best in the world.
So, I mean, let's talk about Paris Eternal as a whole, but let's try to use London as kind of a little bit more of the scope, since we've, I think, talked a bit about Toronto Defiant. In that, what do you think made them so difficult to deal with for the London Spitfire? FD God, obviously, I think, being one.
I think they kind of started off on the wrong foot. I think Paris, obviously, without Smex, that's what they showed on Saturday, and coming into Sunday, you kind of have to expect the same. Maybe not the same style, maybe not the same picks, and obviously that deviated, but you've got to assume that they're going to be running double main tank, and it didn't seem like London came prepared for that, and they got absolutely smashed. And that's exactly what Paris wants to do, is just run in, get you out and kind of in your own head early with this very kind of rush down team composition, right? Like, we just run at you. FD God pops off, he clutches a couple fights, they're up 1-0, like convincingly so. Then they go into King's Row, and then they're throwing another weird pick at them with Sigma. I think at that point, especially with how JMac was playing, and again, I don't think he's a fantastic main type by any means, but they didn't look good. And I talked about this, while we were watching, but I think during that halftime, you started to see more of a game plan come in from the coaching staff, Agape and Bavane, trying to, get these players on the same page, because what we saw from Toronto that really did work against Paris' style is using the Diva and the Reaper. So the Reaper TP's in, the Diva kind of babysits him, and then they kind of pincer. We weren't seeing Bernard consistently help Glister on that, and that's why FD God kind of just was smothering him the entire time, and that's why they couldn't really get a lot of pressure. Then you start to see JMac get walled off. I think it was just a breakdown. I'm not one to just immediately run to tilt, but I think that would be one of the games where I think you just completely throw your hands up and nobody was expecting this. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Let's just try to run the game plan. JMac's feeding. Like, what do we do, right? What do we do?
Yeah. I also think Bernard did probably a better job of shutting down Nene than he was able to with XCI. It felt like he... like they didn't really... I would have to look at it again, but I feel like this is one of those instances where a player or like a group of players doesn't understand an interaction that's been thrown at them in terms of like So for instance, let's take a hypothetical. If the focus target is suddenly a different one, your ability usage should be different, not just for the player that is being focused, but for everyone. And if you don't have an answer for that in the moment and have never seen that, I feel like this is where London is very vulnerable to. It's also that I think whatever proper play in this meta is, it felt like NYXL was playing that again. It felt like London understood proper play in terms of like, okay, we're playing a bunch of like the standard with Ana, with a bunch of McCree, a bunch of Reaper, but always the main, whatever. They understood the rules of that. And once those rules were broken and there was a Moira in the mix, it's like, okay, so what's different here, right? And I think this is just expected for a roster this young and for a meta this early. So it's also just like that's something for the replay viewers. I think a typical match where the performance delta between London playing New York and London playing Paris was definitely noticeable.
100%.
We got to see.
Sorry, all I was gonna say is I think you also might see a case of a team that plays up and plays down rather than plays consistently. They really played up to NYXL, but you really just didn't see that from Paris Eternal at all. They played down. There was, discussions about overconfidence in that. I think XZI was a little bit of a question mark. I don't think teams fully expected him to perform as well as he did. But I think combined with, Glister largely being shut down for most of it. And Jade, I'm sorry, I watched as much as I could of LG Huya to get a read on JMac. And I thought his Orisa was fine, but on anything else, it was kind of feeding. And it didn't translate well, I think, to the Overwatch League either. So
I gotta give credit to Nico there, especially in that NYXL matchup. I think things went sideways really quickly with a lot of those walls from either team, whereas Nico in Paris really forced him to fight into chokes, walled him out, and then just abused him. Like, I think that's probably more a credit to him rather than JMac just feeding. And again, I think he performed very, very badly. So I won't defend him there, but I think on top of him having a bad performance and Nico playing very, very well, or Paris just having like the right game plan to set him up for success. I think a lot of that should go to Nico.
Let's go to our match of the week. Let's talk about the LA Gladiators here. LA Gladiators coming in. We said this is going to be a match of the week, and not a lot of people agreed with us, actually. If you looked at the YouTube comments, they're like, no way. Valiant versus Fuel is going to be match of the week. It's going to be way closer. We're like, no. That's not going to happen. This was a really fun match to watch, I think, overall. But from the Gladiators' perspective, we saw Birdring coming in. We didn't see Mirror right away. We didn't see OGE right away. Joe, what'd you think about like the overall Gladiators roster strategy against the Vancouver Titans?
I'm still kind of thinking about that myself. I think it might be kind of a long-term, at least at main tank, a long-term strategy where they're trying to make a rotation. They're trying to keep people invested into the team and kind of try to keep everybody's morale high, give everybody a little bit of playtime, maybe file, Cloudy into more of a Rhine specialist role where OG comes in on, maps that favor dive like Horizon, like Dorado, where you can kind of play these off styles and more, flexible styles where Cloudy's probably going to be the Rhine specialist and play on Reinhardt maps. At least that's what I'm hoping. Because if not, then I worry about this trade. If you think back to the offseason, Dallas and Gladiators traded Decay and OG. And if OG's just not seeing playtime for whatever reason, and you gave your potential superstar to Dallas and we see what he's capable of now, I gotta really scratch my head on that one. So I do think it's going to be a rotation. Was pleasantly surprised with Bird Ring.
Yes.
Cloudy started pretty poor, I will say. First sub maps especially, and then the rest of Control definitely got his stuff together. Looked much better.
There's the shatter
And then
right
kind
there,
of
the big shatter up on Shrine.
Boom.
Kind of fell off towards the end though. I think
I agree.
when it came to game 5, it didn't look great again. So I think it's a team that can kind of come in and grow towards the mid and towards the end of the season. I expected them to do a whole lot more flexing. Didn't see that, so I was kind of disappointed. And on the offset, to Vancouver's credit, they were the team to be doing a lot of flexing. They were the team to be kind of using their own style of play. So that was something I didn't see coming. And hats off to them for kind of pulling that out. So that was definitely a monkey wrench into my plans if you watched our prediction show. So
Any thoughts
definitely
on
nothing that great.
Any thoughts on Mirror and his debut?
I think I need to see a little bit more.
Same.
So far so good. I think as McCree
Didn't stand out as poor. Yeah.
Oh, definitely not poor.
No,
It
no,
definitely
definitely, yeah.
good, but I think it was more of like the position on the map that was like really, really good for him. But all in all, like a good first showing. I just want to see a little bit more, come mid-season. I think we'll have a better read on exactly what this roster is, especially if they're going to be rotating people in and out.
Are you still bearish on your Gladiators kind of flirting around 12?
I think I don't know. I'm hesitant to kind of rely on that or go back to it and like, oh look, I got it right. Haha. It's because it's Vancouver. Like this was going to be a match that wasn't going to be able to just be projected from power rankings. Like if there was going to be an upset, I kind of painted it as Gladiators, being the more flexible team, fighting against the more rigid, brute force team. And we didn't see that play out exactly, but they still kind of put up a show, and they took it to Gladiators, or they took it to Vancouver rather. Pretty, took them to game 5. So that's definitely not something to slouch on, but we'll see. I'm not ready to just move them up in the projections just yet, but great first showing. I'll give them that 100%.
Am I the only one that thought Vancouver was just styling for a lot of this series? Like, they played a bunch of seemingly, suboptimal comps, whatever. Huxler makes it work. But then to bring in, like, the substitutes that's like, oh, yeah? You're going to do that here? Like, I don't think you need to play Stitch ever. Like, Sumansu should just, like, be your starter. It's actually crazy how much of a step up
Are we
he is.
breaking out the sandbags? Are we making excuses?
No, they're just like trying to put on a show. I don't think they care that much. Like a roster like this knows they are going to make playoffs. There's no way. Like, I think if they hold it together and everything, like that's just a playoff team, right? So I think they just wanted to pull on a show. They don't necessarily hunt a perfect score. They actually never really did, even last season.
Oh,
Like,
100%. That's true.
If you're smitten with your perfect season, you don't style as much as they actually did. Bringing out that was right. They brought out Jaehong, right?
Up on Hanamura.
Don't
And then
do
he
that.
immediately packed
Definitely.
up his stuff.
I mean, he won his map, but also
He got his quota. He go back and
They don't
he's
even let him
hourly.
set up his own mouse. He has to borrow somebody else's.
And I mean, Twilight also just like incredible series again. No reason to play him. I feel like this was a 60% serious match for the Valiant for Vancouver. Like 60% is low, but like 80% serious.
I would say I don't think it was so much styling and putting on a show as much as it was maybe feeling out the space a little bit. What can we do? Like LA Gladiators are a serious enough opponent where you can give them some different looks. Throw dive in there. You're like, you know what? Let's just let Haxel and see what happens. But at the same time, like I think that if the Titans ever felt that their their ability to win the match was in jeopardy, you'd, I think, immediately see them snap back into, you know, as you just said, a much more rigid play style, something that, you know, work, putting in your best players on their best heroes in, you know, their version of the best meta or their best version of the meta. And we would see them go from there. But I don't know if it was so much styling. I think of like, since we're using UFC references, you know, when a UFC fighter gets in the ring, they're feeling out the space at first, and you're kind of feeling out, seeing what they can do. And I think a little bit of that is just like, hey, match number 1, let's feel it out. Let's see how it goes. We don't feel super at risk here. I think 85% is probably a lot like closer of
probably, yeah. It's probably fit. 60 is just like dumb. It's definitely not the case, but 85% serious is
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Another thing I wanted to mention with Glads, or maybe no, it was more on Titans. You know, we saw Stitch kind of pop up with Valiant. So I think in a way, like we're seeing with Toronto, like we're seeing with Glads, like we're seeing with Vancouver, I think teams, you know, are planning for the long haul. They're planning to kind of keep people, you know, fresh. They want to get them playtime as much as it might not be optimal. They want to start off the season with high morale rather than just, you know, we're just going to try and win every match. We want to try and keep players bought into the system all season long. Stitch, again, might be more of their Sombra player rather than Sominsu. So it's, I don't know if it's styling or if it's just like trying to play the long game. I'm not ready to just write them off just yet. Whereas last season, you know, map 4 comes out, you know, we've already won the match. Let's just, you know, let's gun Genji, right? Like that's obviously styling. This, I got to give him a little bit more credit.
Fair. Let's talk about the Dallas Fuel. So Dallas Fuel are a team that I think people are higher on than last year, but still very skeptical that a team that has put a lot of resources into the former Envious core can, using what they have left and getting whatever players that they can, be a real contender this year. But we did get to see Doha and Decay, and I think Decay especially stood out. Doha, I think, was great as well. Don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of it, again, has to do with just like the spectator POV. I'm not as good at watching video live as you are and analyzing. I need to go back and watch from different views. I can't be like, oh, I'm watching Decay's point of view right now, but I'm thinking about Doha. I'm just bad at that. So, but Decay definitely stood out. Kept the match kind of close against the LA Valiant. I think we could talk about the shock later on, but I mean, this is kind of the Decay show here, Yiska, I think.
And yeah. I mean, I don't want to downplay Doha's performance because I think, like, legitimately, this looked like a contender for a top 5, perhaps top 3 DPS line in the Overwatch League. Of course, we still gotta wait. There's a lot of Overwatch to be played. It's just like, in terms of like, if they could play like this every weekend, they're close to that. And especially Decay, like that was just like a nuts performance. Probably the most impressive player that weekend. I think
if they did like a player of the weekend, like they do a player of the week in NFL, he would definitely be up there. I would have to really think about it more, but Decay was nuts.
I guess KSP is another one to mention. Like it's also, I don't know. Let me bring up that tangent later on, but or not tangent, but that point. But I think generally, like, just like his hero pool as well, but the McCree was just like insane. Like XZI was already nuts. Decay put like another 10% on that, and just like indomitable, you know, like and he deserved better that weekend, honestly, than the results he got.
And that's exactly kind of how I hoped this Dallas Fuel lineup would go. I didn't know they were getting Crimzo, right? Well, that was a pretty late addition. But when you look at Doha and you look at their contenders played, you look at Decay over his breadth of playing Korea, this kid has the potential to be a superstar in this league. And the fact that Dallas got him is a highway robbery. Like that is insane that a bottom half team, however you want to peak them, was able to kind of secure this kind of talent. Blows me. That just mind blowing to me. That's
I mean,
insane.
To be fair, I think that is not the most nuts thing in terms of like big solid or amazing player transfers, because Dallas has the money. What is actually nuts is KSP going for the market value that he had.
Up there
and
as well.
KSP was 95%, 90 like within Decay's range over that weekend. Big reason why they actually won that series. Nuts player, like Bench tweeted about it, how ridiculous that steal was. I saw some feedback towards that point, like, well, who would really be upgraded by that? Like a lot of them already have nuts. Like 12 up to 12 or 15 teams would be upgraded by having KSP. And
like
also he's been doing that reliably, like
100%. You go back to Samsung, you watch him just pop off on hit scan. But that's my distinction with this. Decay can flex around and do a lot of different things on a lot of different heroes. KSP is very much kind of like a hit scan specialist. True. Is he great at hit scan? 100%. And teams really should have been looking at contenders a whole lot more. And scouting definitely needs to be upgraded, because the fact that he's kind of slipping through the cracks, and you're already kind of you're in the off season, you're trying to parse out the meta, you're trying to figure it out. And if hit scan's being played, why is he not a go-to, at least as a specialist?
Yeah,
doesn't make much sense to me, right? But that's where I go to Decay. He's going to be a starter on this team throughout the entire season. And I'm sorry, traditional sports fans, especially football fans, but I'm kind of worried that Dallas is going to Andrew Luck their DPS lineup. I hope that they don't just run them into the ground and abuse them and make them retire very early. Hopefully I got that right. Files, please help me.
Yeah, I think too, it's really easy. And I think if anybody was styling this weekend, I think it was the San Francisco Shock. It's a team that came in with almost no practice and just kind of like threw together the greatest hits kind of thing. But the Dallas Fuel were one fight away, and one fight that they had appeared to have won away from taking the Shock to map 5 on Oasis.
Yeah, barring, a like pixel perfect nano placement into a, an impeccable shot from Striker there towards the end of that map. Yeah, they easily could have taken this to map 5. They take control. Things look a lot different if that one play does not happen exactly as it was supposed to. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty. He's on a flank. He's about to shoot him. He gets the nano. He turns. He flicks. He shoots him. The play's dead. Nice. Right? Like that was insane. But that's the type of stuff that makes Shock championship caliber.
Sure,
they can pull that out at a moment's notice. It's not that they're turning the switch on, but they're always capable of doing these things. We saw a lot of stylistic changes, seeing a bit more main support on Brig, weirdly enough, on Havana. So they're trying some different things. I really don't know if Architect is styling. I don't know if that's where we were going with this, but I hesitate on that one. I don't know if that one's styling or if he's actually sick.
I was more being hyperbolic in the sense of if a team was styling this week, I think it was much more likely the San Francisco Shock than it was the Vancouver Titans.
Sinatra going out and just being like, I'm going to go Doom. And that might have been a great choice, but at the end of the day, they're confident. They're coming in, it's Dallas, haha, bottom 5. I really don't know if people were expecting Decay and Doha to be this good, especially when you look at, Doha, especially like I think there's more buy-in with Decay just because we've seen, a ton of different play from him across different metas, but Doha was kind of just a Sombra player for a lot of people. And he showed he's got a Doom, he's got a Junk, he's flexible. He can be used on these different maps and on different heroes. So I don't think Dallas is a team you can just completely sleep on, especially with 2 absolute studs at DPS. The rest of the team,
I think Crimzo. I wanted to say I think Crimzo performed well considering like on a new squad.
I got to go back. My mind was just on Decay and just watching him drag this poor team kicking and screaming across the line and to some map victory. So that's a map viewer for me. I gotta go back and actually look at the rest of Dallas, because in my summation, this was the DPS show.
Fair enough. let's discuss the Boston Uprising really quick. Expectedly
Do we have to?
by NYXL 3-0. But I have a few. I think there's one big question here. I think the Boston Optimists were looking at Myunbong and Swimmer to really make an impact early on. Do you feel that they did that in this 03? I didn't see it personally. I don't want to say that they performed poorly.
I don't know if Myunbong performed poorly, but it's so hard to just like remove the blinders, and that's again something that we're going to have to review. If I had to guess, and again, I was kind of just more, blinded by the fact that we're taking duels with, an MVP caliber flex support and losing and just, these massive just misplays, like botched plays left and right. Granted, it's day one, you can excuse yada yada. That's not something. That's not a good thing. That's not a good foot to start off on. And it's hard to look good. There's really no way to mince words there. Like it's difficult for a flex support to look good when your team is that bad. So can we see more? We're gonna have to kind of sift for gold with him, and I'm sure he's doing fine and the best he can, but it's tough to stand out.
After this weekend, are they still your 20th place team?
Sure, they sure are. They certainly
NYXL
are.
isn't a very good litmus test, but
no,
it's
God,
not.
they were bad.
All right. Well, we might as well go talk about NYXL next then, huh?
A bit more interesting, yes.
Yeah. So New York Excelsior, I think were really fun. Look at Big Boss Pine coming out. Tell me you didn't get amped. See Pine coming out, waving
can we
the
just
flag.
applaud Andbox for putting on? And I think it was Adam Epicella's company, former MLG employee, that kind of put on the whole event. Yeah. What an event. If that's like the pinnacle of homestands, that's at the bar. If you can't cross that bar, I don't want you in here. Like amp it up. I want more of this. This is what's going to make the Overwatch League work. Not so much of Dallas, coming out on stage. I think they did the bare minimum, but I want to see prepackaged shoulder content. I want more interviews. I want more, stuff to play during halftime. This is the stuff you got. Chris Puckett amping up the crowd, having them cheer. Yep. Boston sucks. This, that, the other thing. I'd love to be there. That sounds like an event I want to go to. Having Dallas line up on stage with some CO2 cans, I don't know. Not so much.
That's what it was.
At least last year they had fireworks. Like, where were the fireworks this year? I was pretty disappointed.
Yeah. I heard back from people that were there, and they all said it was an amazing experience. Just like NYXL is just the gold standard of branding and doing everything professional in Overwatch. It doesn't get better. Like, from providing scrim opportunities for everyone, to hiring the right people to host the stand, to bring in cool personalities for the like in Emong, in Pine, to the little to the walkout with the little logos running, like the photography beforehand with the hype trailer, like amazing hype trailer.
Yep.
Once again shown at that venue.
The media team was incredible. Just
everything there was amazing, honestly, and I hope that we get other teams looking at this and going like, okay, we gotta pedal to the metal. I can also tell you, Esports Engine will be busy this season in terms of like just being hired. Of course, that doesn't mean that because Esports Engine runs it's going to be the same experience, because I think there's a lot that Andbox did on top of that stuff that made it so great. And in general, like what a great homestand, what a great message too.
Can't praise that enough.
Yeah. So let's talk about the actual matches then. And I think one of the big standout performers on this one, and I don't think Joe wants to admit it, or Yiska, honestly, was Hotba on Diva. No,
it's fine.
No, you don't want to admit it, or no, you don't think he played that well?
I think he played good. I just think we're completely judging this off of the bombs. Give me an argument, not pointed at you, John, but I want to see people really go in and look at Glister compared to Hotba did Glister have, or not Glister? I'm sorry, Bernard.
Yeah, it's like, I don't follow.
No, 100%. Bernard played fantastic Overwatch throughout both of his series. Hotba had some flashy bombs. Did he play good? 100%. You know, I'm not criticizing him, but I think his stocks shot way up off of some flashy plays, and we gotta ice that. We calm down. He's good, yes, 100%. But is he Big Boss Pine? That's not even fair. We're doing a disservice to Pine.
I also would love to place bombs against JMac. Whoa.
Sure, exactly.
Dude.
Isn't that great?
Like, I'd also hate to be JMac's teammate when a bomb is in the air. Jesus Christ. Like, rewatch King's Row third, but Bobble is just like, oh, please, bro. Please like
protect me. I don't want to ice block, please.
And he runs towards it, and JMac's just like, I'm safe. Like, and then he just pops, and Hailey gets caught too, and that actually loses that fight, and ultimately puts NYXL in the position to win that map. Like, that map, London was very, very close to to being up 2-0 against the NYXL. And I think Hotba performed probably a little better than I would have anticipated, to be fair.
Totally.
I don't think
give him that.
I'm completely wrong in judging that. I think, for instance, Meko is a better off tank than he is.
Yep.
But he's definitely a more fun person to follow.
I think we have to see, though, too, right? Like, you have Meko and Mono with so much. I mean, honestly, Meko with the entire team. Like, what does Hotba look like at mid-season, right? Does he gel with this team even better? I agree. I think, if anything, I don't think mechanically I had many issues with Hotba. No. It was a little bit more on, like, the synergistic side. There just seems to be some weird timings on just kind of where he was in relation to the fights. And I don't think that was necessarily an individual skill thing as much as it was a brand new team. We're finally on stage. We're in New York. I don't know if Hotba's been in a situation like that or not. There's a lot going on. There's, it's just, I think, but I think I'm a little bit higher on Hotba than you guys are, but I'm also not going into my fantasy leagues and trading away my best diva player for Hotba just yet.
You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
But I think, again, I think he overperformed where the reasonable expectations, the realist expectations were for Hotba. The other person I wanted to ask about was, who are you? And I don't think it was
really interesting.
I got some questions. I'm not sold on the whole "who are you" train. I question where Libero is. Libero's known to have a very good May. Why is he not playing instead of who are you? Why is he not positioned alongside who are you? Why is he not just playing over who are you? That's very weird to me. And to judge who are you's May, yes, I think he was more proactive, to your point, but I think that's just NYXL's they're trying to be more proactive. They're done with the whole, we want to be defensive, we want to be reactive. They have a new coaching staff. They have Hotba coming in. They want to be pressing forward. Go back and look at their Ryan Zarya performance, a composition that I don't think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we saw from any other team. That was very much about positioning Mono to just blitz through these walls, be okay with being split off, giving him the resources to survive and brawl, to kind of get past these walls. Yes, who are you was more proactive, but I think the efficiency of these walls can be drawn into question. I think he's out there playing ultimate frisbee with his ults. I got problems. I don't think that he's going to continue to perform and it's a shame because hero pools come in and could potentially mess this whole narrative up. But I think as we see NYXL progress, and if this meta was to kind of maintain, I don't think he'd be very good. I think he'd probably be very serviceable on May. I'm not sold on this May performance. I need to see a little bit more to have a better feel, but that performance against London wasn't very good.
I'm really hoping that they used a game against the London Spitfire, and then who did they play second? Why am I blanking out? Dallas?
Boston.
Boston, sorry.
Boston.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Boston.
that's exactly why
Toronto
you're
for
right.
the
So
weekend. Yeah.
I also don't wonder if like, hey, we brought in new fresh blood.
Possible.
People are really
Definitely.
excited to see him in New York. Let's let him play. But if it was going to be an NYXL versus Titans or Gladiators, teams that are arguably top 10 plus, a shock.
Sure.
I don't wonder if you maybe do see more libero.
That's a fair point. I definitely agree with that. To NYXL's credit though, especially going back to that Boston game, dude, Sabiolbe had a sick pulse bomb. That pulse bomb in the corner didn't get a lot of kills, but if you watch everybody's health,
So
it just
much damage.
plummets. Just so much damage off the back of that. Looked like a stud. Looked like Apex days. It was pleasant to see a lot of the old heads kind of come back in and show that they still have it. It was nice to see Bird Ring look like old Ring. It was nice to see generally.
So sorry, go ahead.
Jonak. Oh my God.
He's good.
Unfortunately, a lot of his nuts plays happened off cam, or not off cam necessarily, but definitely away from the attention of the crowd and the observer. Like, people didn't realize that he single-handedly won King's Row by sleeping Bernard in a way where he boosts and Jonak sleeps him, and he just like gets
he's boosting over
falls
the
into
edge.
Yeah, on King's Row last, and he just drops down. It's like immediately dead. He boosts the right targets. Honestly, Mano was kind of feeding by overextending into that.
Super aggressive.
Jonah clutched the hell out of this. Then, like, when you think, okay, Mano is kind of in deep trouble, suddenly there's a 4-man Bionade just like putting a stop to anything like that. It's just like, well, we could go hard for Mano, but we could also absolutely lose 4 people towards that here. Sleep dots. Mwah. Like, amazing. Didn't die unnecessarily often. He had a couple, like, every player has just like 2 or 3 a match, like things where you go, okay. But otherwise, Jesus Christ, is that kid still absolutely nuts? Like,
Yeah, Jonak played great. I think Sabiolbe, it was nice to see him again, even though, again, observing him on Tracer is not for the faint. I needed some Dramamine after that one. Let's talk about, I think, probably one of the biggest surprises, though, and then we got to get out of here. And I don't even think it was a surprise for anyone here on the show, but I think generally the community was really surprised. The LA Valiant walk away 1-1 this weekend, defeat the Dallas Fuel, lose to the Paris Eternal. Do I have that
Vancouver
right? Or am I,
Titans.
did I?
Titans.
Nope.
Is that right?
They played
That's
Dallas and then lost to Titans.
Titans.
Lost to
Thank you.
Titans.
Sorry, I don't
Yep.
know why
Okay.
my co-host didn't proofread my
not bad.
yeah. Anyways, they played really well this weekend. A lot of questions surrounding the roster. I mean, yeah, they came out swinging, I guess.
Speaking
is
of,
the blaming the co-host. You guys know it's my fault. It's fine.
goddamn gig.
Jeez. Yep. Gig.
Come on.
Oh my God.
Talk about feast or famine. This team, and to be fair, Gravy did have a very good series this weekend. For him was a great showing. But there are some moments where I'm just like, what are y'all doing? Especially on Lee Jong. I think it was against Vancouver. It's last fight. It's like 99 Vancouver to like 92 Valiant. Vancouver, I think Vancouver is 92. They have point control. They're ticking up. Valiant's attacking. And I don't know if he felt he needed to go onto the point and touch, but his team goes across the bridge on Gardens and he flies through the window and just gets demacked immediately and dies. Like, completely feast or famine this series.
I'll also say, like, has anyone seen Fraggy completely shaved? Are we sure that's not, a possibility? Because some of that was this weekend was big Fraggy energy. Like, of course, some miscommunication stuff. Like, I remember on Blizzard World, they're all sitting on top on first on defense, and he just like drops earlier, and nobody's really like ready for that, and he just like dies. And I think that's just an obvious miscommunication. They're probably not on him. It's also always the question, like, when it made him go this hard, who's wrong here, right? But I mean, I feel like holy, like that's an aggressive boy, and I wonder if because they of course also have a second main tank, if that's the more defensive choice or whatnot, but we'll see. Like definitely a non-cowardly performance.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think the broadcast showed it where he gets nanoed on Lijiang on Gardens and charges across the pond, and then mouse ones all the way back through White Room to his team on point. Like, you shouldn't be allowed to get away with that. It's fine, you know, whatever Vancouver did, but it can't be doing that. That's not the play. Like, aggro is one thing. Yes, I think proactivity is good, and I think generally in terms of strategy, you always want to be the one setting the pace of the match. But this was, this was, you know, this was all gas, no brakes. This is rough.
That's by the way, like the nano interaction. I think that's actually quite interesting. How in the future, if this, like for the next couple of weeks until we get that meta break, how teams in that ice skating comp are going to be using their nano, because it goes between using it offensively, of course, like on in specific situations, but also just like giving like the main tank, even though he won't be swinging, just like a nice like resistance buff, and using it quite defensively. And I'm not sure if that always necessarily was like the intention, or if it's just a miscommunication and the Rhine couldn't realistically be expected to swing here because of how deep he is into being frozen or whatnot, or where his HP is or whatever. But yeah, generally it's that's an interesting interaction we'll have to figure out. And then of course it completely changes once we introduce Genjis here and there. But in terms of like, okay, what happens in that repatriation comp with Diva Rhine, like who gets it, right? And that's going to be interesting how that develops.
I think it's a super flexible ult that'll ultimately be dependent on the teams. I think when you look at Toronto, you saw them nanoing the Reaper on the engage. Didn't get a lot of value, but I think there's probably reasons why that happened. Maybe misplays on the front line, this, that, the other thing. And then you look at Valiant, where they're nanoing Gravy down one man. They're nanoing May on some fights. Like it's very flexible. You're seeing teams be reactive. You're seeing teams be a little bit more proactive with it. I think it's going to come down to the style. I don't think it'll just be like a rigid, like this is how you use this ult. It'll just be how and where you're using your resources.
So before we get out of here, because we do need to, we're going off like full long on this one. I do want to talk about McGravy and KSP, because I think both of them had mention-worthy performances. KSP, Yiska, you said probably one of two top candidates for like a player of the week type thing if we were ever to do that. Huge debut with the Valiant, played really well, kept games really close. What really stood out for you with KSP, especially against a team like the Vancouver Titans, where you know it's going to be a tough one.
For KSP, it's like he just like sometimes strings frags together, where it's not like, so some players are just like good at getting picks and putting you up and giving you like that 20% win boost. KSP's like, I'm going to string and I'm going to single-handedly either bring back this fight or win you this. And in terms of that, also like it's kind of interesting that like that these contenders players just come in and like perform like they were like XCI I'm looking at, like KSP I'm looking at, like these players, they don't seem to be losing much tempo just playing at the highest level, possibly because of the meta volatility at the moment. But then honestly, to me, towards the McGravy point, I'll tell you what, I expected KSP to be nuts. I didn't expect McGravy to be this good. Yep, like
I agree.
I don't know. I feel kind of bad for undervaluing him, but he had a great performance, especially against Dallas. So that makes me understand why I was entirely off judging this roster, because I was like, okay, it's kind of a known quantity. So like, where's that additional percentage coming from? And a lot of it is McGravy.
Sure. Joe, closing thoughts on McGravy and KSP.
KSP is a stud, but I wouldn't be surprised if we just see less of him. So don't expect him to be a massive flex player if Hitscan kind of rotates out and it's not super valuable. I do worry that we might not see a ton of him. But to that point, I would love to see them develop their own style and make him work, because he can be a superstar if you give him the right tools. So is it a style thing? Can they develop their style, or do they rotate him out and let Apply get in there and get some game time? So see.
Well, that's going to do it for us. We went a little long on our first recap episode. We're going to probably, A, welcome to Tactical Crouch, and B, we'll figure out the format, I think, a little bit more as we continue to play around with it and all that. But thank you guys for hanging out with us. Hope you enjoyed it. Do definitely let us know, whether you're in chat or watching on YouTube or listening, what you think about A, the new format, B, if you think the B-roll footage is helpful at all, because it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to gather. It's not impossible, and it's not a ton of extra work, so I think it's worth it if people really like it. But if you don't really like it, audio listeners, this definitely doesn't apply to you. But if you don't really like it or don't find it valuable at all, let us know, or what you want something different, because I can't totally plan around having every play on call. It's just not feasible at all, because we do the show live. But yeah, we're just going to kind of keep doing it, playing it as it is. Next show will be on Wednesday. It'll be a preview for the upcoming homestand, and I don't even know what it is yet. I haven't even looked. But we're down
we're going to Philly.
We legitimately don't know what it is. I assume we're just going to have one homestand.
Yeah, I think it's just
4 matches next week.
We've got Florida, Houston coming up. We've got Washington, Philly. We've got Washington, Houston. We've got Florida, Philly. So interesting matches. I don't think they'll be completely as blowout-y. Not so much 3 Overwatch. So yeah, it'll be exciting. I think next homestand's gonna be good.
Awesome. Yeah. Other than that, we are going to get out of here. We do have one new patron, Keith R. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Welcome. We're going to be doing a game night again soon. I just wanted to give a shout out to Spencer, who invited me out to the Shock viewing party yesterday in Campbell, and I got to meet with some of the Shock people, and a couple of them actually listened to the show and stuff, and we talked about maybe getting some Shock people on the show in the future.
Yeah, let's go, Brett. Come on the show, Brett.
Right, there we go.
Andy, I see you out there.
Right? So, but a huge shout out to Spencer. Thanks for inviting me to that. We ended up going there, then going out to a really nice Italian place, just like right down the street from where it was for my birthday. I love seafood, and they had lobster ravioli. It was so good. So
that sounds good.
Anyways,
sounds good.
Besides that, Joe, shout outs for the week. Where can people find you?
Shout outs, socials everywhere at Volamel, Volamel. I'm gonna be doing some video content. Hopefully, when these goddamn matches pop up on the replay viewer, I'm gonna be breaking down some plays, some analysis, some quick little things in the YouTube. Just posted this week's or last week's alternate Overwatch history, where we go over what if the Chengdu Hunters got a little bit of Gusha in their life. So check that out, and written content on GG Intel this week. Stay tuned.
Awesome. Yiska, what about you, man?
You already know how it is. Like, basically, I do pretty much nothing else but Overwatch at the moment. And yeah, tomorrow I'm going to have a even more granular breakdown of the NYXL match against the London Spitfire. I actually like that match a lot. Going to be once again on GG Intel. If you haven't, give maybe the Defiant and Eternal recap a read, and then otherwise I'll, like, towards the middle of the week, I'll probably distill what kind of lessons and what kind of observations I made over the weekend.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it for us then. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. Thanks again for watching and hanging out with us. We'll be back Wednesday for another episode of Tactical Crouch. Till then, See you next time, and we'll be back with the post show.